Welcome to Voluntarist Academy. This channel is dedicated to teaching natural law and to the abolition of slavery in the 21st century. Join me, James Cordiner, your guide through many important and some forgotten historical articles, along with interviews featuring today's most important voluntarist leaders that outline what we can and need to do today to further usher in a condition of real freedom for us and for the future. Voluntarism leads to real freedom. All other political philosophies allow a ruling class to engage in violence and coercion against the majority. Voluntarists reject the artificially indoctrinated belief system of statism in favor of true freedom through the voluntary interactions between free people. Voluntarist Academy will teach all things regarding the only ism that is fair for everyone. Subscribe today and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And on your way out, just remember, you own yourself, period. I'm very honored to have a very special guest today, Richard Grove of tragedyandhope.com, Grand Theft World podcast, Peace Revolution podcast, and last but not least, Autonomy has joined me for a compelling conversation / interview today. Thank you for joining me, Rich. How are you?
Hey, thanks for the invite, James. Happy to be here. And yeah, I mean, triggering complexity is what it's all about. Getting into growth mode and enriching the audience with some stuff they didn't know before.
That's what we're all about, for real. I just want to, take this opportunity to give you a personal thank you for the years of hard work that you've put in to communicate the truth and to inspire critical thinking that you have done through your work. And it's been a great impact on my life, and I'm sure many others. So tip of the cap to you, Richard. Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, and I was naive and I didn't know any better. That's how it started. Now I'm just naive and I know a little bit better.
I like to ask all my first time guests just to give us a brief rundown on what got them started with communicating the truth or blowing the whistle on these things that they discover. Could you please give us your story?
Sometimes in life, people run across things that are outside the official narrative, and they go back to the official narrative because they don't see enough of those things outside the official narrative to really get their learning on. And fortunately for me, I had a series of slow learning experiences that cost me a great deal of time, money, and energy. And through those experiences, I was able to notice and then observe and identify and organize and collect a whole bunch of pieces of evidence that show a very different ruling structure to not only this country, but to the planet than what we are traditionally told. And it's only through learning about these various layers that I found empowerment, because the official narrative is very much not meant to empower the individual with truth or justice or the American way. And I just thought we could do better. So I started researching probably in 2002, 2003, and then by 2004, I knew there was definitely something going on. And by 2006, 2005, I had formulated Project Constellation, but it doesn't get published until May of 2006. And then from that being released, I started a podcast series called 9/11 Synchronicity. And I started that on July 4th, 2006. And then after I was done kind of collecting and archiving the evidence from 9/11 that was contradictory to the official narrative, yet substantial, worthy of merit and study, and relevant to the topic, people saying conspiracy theories don't exist or they're just all a bunch of mumbo jumbo. I agree with that. There's a lot of that out there. However, there amongst that noise, there is a very real signal, and there are people who have a supranational interest, meaning not just to one nation are they loyal, they have a bigger picture, a vision of making the world over in their image in a very totalitarian, despotic, tyranny-ridden type of way that it makes American freedom go the way of the dodo bird. And I don't think that's a good idea. I think the type of freedom that we continue to experiment with in America is like a high point in human development, where we have said that slavery is wrong, And we have made strong movements to abolish such things and to give people rights, even though those rights can be inconvenient to other people in power sometimes. Rights of free speech, rights of self-defense, rights of right to assemble, right to worship as you please, right to not be spied on by the state. There's a whole lot of rights. And if you go back to the constitutional republic aspect of it, it was even more concerning to me that the people in power are not the role of the government under the Constitution is to protect our rights, not to keep us safe, not to keep us secure, not to remove our rights in the name of security, all these things that they've done really since 9/11. So I discovered that there was a problem. I discovered the prolific nature of that problem. And it's a little bit stymieing because you find out that there's no authorities to go tell. You can't like, hey, if I could just talk to the president, like we could defend our. No, the president, they were all in on it, and benefit from the destruction of America because these are greedy people with small minds and political agendas that do not align with freedom, and those agendas became a focus of my research because if that's the top-down control that we are all suffering under, then wouldn't it behoove us to kind of understand they, them, those who can easily be named, create a timeline, and maybe even a map of their endeavors so that we could communicate with other people. So my active literacy communications, as you know, your question was pointing out, it starts with having incredulity and questioning things and curiosity to find those answers. And then when you find enough answers and you start getting to how are these organized together to formulate an actionable decision matrix so you can make choices and live a freer life. You know, when you get into the history and the epistemology of how all these things work, and then get into the fact that critical thinking is not something they want people to know how to do, it seems to go in stride that you would start trying to find the truth and then using a method to identify truth so you know what truth looks like. And then from that map of reality, now we can communicate with each other on a level where it's almost all signal and very little noise. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Now, you mentioned abolitionism. You recently, on one of your podcasts, referred to yourself as a 21st century abolitionist. Kind of wanted to pick your brain about that. What does that what does that mean to you? And like,
I would have
how
done it sooner, but I didn't know about it in the 20th century to the extent where it affected Americans. I saw it going on in other places around the world, but I really didn't see the state of our absence of intellectual self-defense and that immune system that keeps a country outside of despotism and tyranny and those types of very corrosive, uh, you know, uh, negative human states of non-freedom. So, I mean, the 21st century, there's more slavery now than ever in history. So I do think it's important that we abolish slavery. And most of the problems that I identified make people unwitting slaves and make them a part of that slavery. And I think that by giving people their choice back to either choose to be a slave or be a prisoner who's seeking to escape that slavery system, I think that's elemental to American freedom. And the type of freedom that we are growing in America is for the rest of the world, but not at the barrel of a gun. It's through becoming informed and embracing a better idea than censorship and totalitarian and political realm where the people that claim to represent you don't know you, don't ask about your concerns, and aren't doing anything on your behalf while they're there. They take lobbyist money and they take that lobbyist money and they put bills that favor the people who give them real political power, which are those big corporations that are, you know, pieces of paper. So that corporate personhood fiction has taken a very real, like stranglehold on our economy. And then once you get to the 21st century, that's a whole bunch of other layers of slavery that are kind of an invisible tax on people because it's various layers of losing freedom because of things that we participate in, but we don't understand.
now, what are some of those big obstacles that are standing in the way, in your opinion?
Well, one of the obstacles that most people have been through is, you know, 15,000 hours of state-sponsored indoctrination camp, which did not teach you how to find reality, how to identify truth, how to build your value and make your offer to the market, all the things you need to do to be an upstanding adult and be responsible and, have a family and these sort of things. Those are not taught in school on purpose because they want people to struggle. They want people to, capitulate to the non-options of the system and then dedicate a large amount of their time over many years to things that they do not find interesting or fortifying or edifying in any type of way. It doesn't bring satisfaction. It's just being done for a paycheck because they don't know any better. So elevating one beyond that kind of rat race system first starts with understanding that you have more potential than you're being able to put out in the game every day, right? And you have more to offer than that structure even allows for you to offer because it's very limiting. So now there's more opportunity, but those bring unknowns. You're going to be in growth mode. That brings discomfort, ambiguity, embarrassment, all these other things. But we also have to balance what the learning brings on the other side: the knowledge, understanding, wisdom, stronger network, increased capacity to solve problems faster, which really changes the rest of your life. So there's a reason to go through the additional self-learning to get those benefits. And then you have other things in your way: learned helplessness, where you don't think you can learn any more useful skills, or, provisional self-esteem, where you only think you're doing a good job if some pseudo authority tells you you're doing a good job. Just fear in general. Many people talk themselves out of doing good ideas because they have negative self-talk they carry around with them, and they give real estate to ideas that are not true, right? So fear in part is false evidence appearing real. It's only by the observation, identification, analysis to a point of understanding without contradictions that you've now replaced that fear, which is a default placeholder, and you've replaced it with knowledge, understanding, wisdom, actions that bring experience and build value in the marketplace for others. Like, value is just any utility that you create other than for yourself that you get some exchange of money for or exchange of goods for, right? You could go barter, Konkin style agorism, or it's legitimately like how people get paychecks in the market. And then there's other things like, how do companies bring in money to pay paychecks? Because if you're getting a paycheck, you should also maybe be empowered by knowing how the company actually brings in the money that makes your paycheck, because then you can be of better value and more indispensable to that organization because you're in line with their goals. But you can't do that when you think you can't do anything else and you're working 3 jobs and you don't have a chance. Like, all these excuses build up. It's really when people make a decision that I'm going to do this thing and not quit on myself. And from there, all else follows. But it's hard to make that decision if you have a funhouse mirror view of the world. It's full of fear. It's going to keep people incapacitated, which is what the status quo wants you to do. So 2 rules: never interrupt your enemy in the middle of them making a mistake, and don't do what your enemy's trying to do to yourself. They want you to feel demoralized and hopeless and helpless and unrelatable, and that you can't build a family or be a dad or be a mom or any of these types of things. They want you to just feel like you're here. Why don't you watch another Netflix series? You're here. How about some more entertainment? You're here. How about some sports ball, right? And they'll keep you entertained. But really, it's just keeping people from finding themselves going through those rites of passage where they discover how to face fear and triumph over it and get to what's on the other side, and then tell the others to do likewise and lead by example. And there's such great opportunity today, but unless people are, have it pointed out and illustrated for them, they don't often see it because they're under a barrage of ideas that don't reflect reality, which comes back to the essential need for intellectual self-defense. There's 3 elements to freedom. There's non-aggression, intellectual self-defense, physical self-defense. Non-aggression, you use it every day. Physical self-defense, you use a couple times throughout your life, but it's really important that you know how to do it. Intellectual self-defense, you use basically every minute of every day to defend yourself from ill ideas and to help good ideas take root and thrive from that understanding of what you can do for yourself, for other people, transact in the market, build your dreams into a realistic reality. So there's a big problem. And the solution is, a super marathon. You don't do it all in one day, but one day people make a decision to do something rather than nothing, and to try their hardest and to not quit on themselves. And that's where they start to experience Success and confidence and competence comes from those actions. And you can't buy it on a store shelf. They don't sell it, but people want it. They just need to know how to earn it for themselves. And those methodologies have been obscured on purpose to make sure people are disempowered and kind of deboosted from our society. And then a very small group of people get like, this is how actually things work. And yes, it's counterintuitive, but it's very learnable and it can be taught to anybody and anybody can learn it if they want to. And that's the big threat to the status quo. They don't want large groups of people to understand that in any way, shape, or form. They want you to think you got to go back to school and indenture yourself to a system that doesn't serve you. They want to keep you not free. So it's up to you. You're the one that wants you to be free. You're going to have to take actions on your behalf. No one can do these things for you, but there's many other people doing these things, and it's a lot more fun to come together and do these things together and liberate each other step by step.
Have you ever read Be Right or Go Wrong?
I don't think
It,
so.
it's like a synopsis on Richard Wetherell's work and the right action ethic. A lot of your teaching style and how you teach, it reminds me of that a lot. And I don't know, I thought I'd bring that up to see if you've ever heard of Richard Wetherell.
No, but I'm going to make a note.
Yeah, I
What is it?
suggest that you do.
Something yes, then go or go wrong? What is it called?
Be right or go wrong.
All right. All right. Now I got a note. I got homework.
Yeah, so that book particularly really captures like a lot of what you were just saying about, he calls it the right action ethic. And it just the gist is that the natural law of human behavior, you know, do right and right things will happen, do wrong and wrong things will happen. And I don't
Well,
know,
it's
I
the
figured
idea
I'd,
behind karma,
yeah,
right?
yeah, basically. Yeah, for sure. You are also talking a lot about uh, what made me think of the 7 lesson school teacher that John Taylor Gatto had written about in one of his books. And I wonder if you could like tell me more about John Taylor Gatto because you did the ultimate history lesson with him. And for me personally, that was a really eye-opening experience to watch that. What was
Well,
it like for you to interview Gatto in such a style? And um, how was he as a person as you knew him?
well, I was a fan of his work. I had his books. I had seen almost every interview that he had given publicly or they had on tape. And what I noticed was I could learn something from every one of his, public appearances, but it was always crackly audio and not great video. And I could just tell there's a lot of opportunity left on the table, a lot of entropy in his ability to communicate to a wider one-to-many audience, right? So the answer was I had just learned not only podcasting, but I taught myself how to make films and cameras, lights, microphone, plus John Taylor Gatto could be really cool. And so he was hard to get a hold of. He was traveling the world, speaking all over the place. So I sent a series of messages. You got to do it in salvos, but I know this from, working in corporate world in executive sales. You don't just send one message and hope for the best. You keep sending messages till you get a response that you're looking for. So I sent him offers for the interview to his farm in upstate New York. I sent him to his apartment. I sent him to his foundation and nothing, crickets. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year later, I get a call from John Taylor Gatto. He's in his barn, upstate New York. He's chasing out some raccoons. And he's like, Richard, this is John Taylor Gatto. And he's like, I want to take you up on the interview opportunity. And I was thinking, because I don't have a budget, I would just go to his place and film him. And he says, yeah, if you'll just buy me a plane ticket to Hartford, I'll come up there and we can do the interview. And of course, like my wife's like, hey, we don't have money right now for a plane ticket or to do any of this type of stuff. And I'm on the phone and I just said, yes, yes, great idea. Yes, yes. And I get off And she's like, we can't afford to do this. I said, we can't afford not to do this. So we're going to figure out how to do it. And we had no air. It was like going to be July 4th weekend. So it's the company anniversary. I have a bunch of activities I've done over the years on that anniversary of Independence Day. And it was gonna be like 90, 100 degrees outside. We had no air conditioning. John's, in his 80s. You can't have him sitting under lights and a whole bunch of heat. So the first thought was we can get some coolers with ice and blow fans across the ice. And I was like, no, we should just buy an air conditioning unit for the window and then crowdfund. And that's how we're going to pay for his ticket and his hotel and all the stuff we need for travel for other people to help us film. And we did that. And the way I did that was I made an offer to my audience that said, if you would like to be an associate producer on this project, here's how, the various levels of participation. I also believe in there, if you donated over $200 to the project, you would get a Peace Revolution t-shirt. So there was like 50 t-shirts that I sold at 200 bucks a piece for a fundraiser. So anyone who doesn't know how to sell a t-shirt for 200 bucks, there you go. You attach it to something meaningful, and then that anyone who has that t-shirt funded the ultimate history lesson. And when I see them at festivals, we can have nice conversations very readily because those are the only people who had that t-shirt, right? So from that, we made enough money to buy his ticket, buy his hotel room, travel, meals, all that good stuff, meals for the crew. And then the first, I don't know, maybe the first 100 5-disc DVD sets. And then I eventually, because I printed them all by hand, the first several thousand, and each thousand had 5 discs in it. So there's a lot of DVDs being burned at my house back in the day. And that project was filmed in July of 2011. And I was editing it in August of 2011. My computer couldn't edit HD footage that I just shot, let alone 5 cameras or 6 cameras. And my buddy Tony Myers came up and he saw my struggle. He's like, bro, you can't even see what you're editing, because the picture's not keeping up with the sound. It was just clusterfuck. And he's like, this is no good. So he built me a computer and he bought an HD monitor so we could actually see it in high definition, what we were doing. And then I spent another 4 months editing the 5 hours of that film and doing color correction and audio improvement and all that good stuff, transcripts, 1,000 references for it, all that good stuff. And then I got it done in December. I'm like, oh, we're rolling up on John's birthday. Let me send him 50 handmade copies, each with 5 DVDs, right? And I'm going to send this nice letter and thank him for the interview and be like, here's 50 copies for you and your, the people who fund you, whatever, your benefactors. And I sent it to the farm in upstate New York and no response. So by January, I'm like, man, he's not at the farm. He must be at his apartment. So I make another 50 copies and I box them up and I send them off. No response. And by this point, I'm like, maybe he doesn't like the movie, you know? I'm starting to take it personal because, what else do you have to go on? And I think it was another 18 months before we found out that he had had a stroke. Like 2 weeks after we filmed the Ultimate History Lesson, he had been in rehab and they finally let him out of there. And then they lost his dentures, right? Now, a dude like that, public speaker, etc., you need your teeth, right? So the first thing we did after John got out was took him to get a haircut, and we started taking him to the dentist to get fitted for new dentures. So Lisa and I would drive to New York. It's like a 12-hour round trip. By the time you drive down there, deal with traffic, get to his place, spend time there, get out of traffic, get back home, it's like 12 hours, right? So we did that 6 times in order for him just to get the dentures and get them fitted and all that good stuff. And then I would be going back like every 8 weeks or so. And Lisa would go with me, or my buddy Dylan would go with me. We'd make a day. It's an exciting day trip into New York City. And John, after his stroke, he was in a hospital bed the whole time. So he had a hospital bed in his living room, and he's like paralyzed on the left side. So he can't really do anything with his left hand, left side of his face. It's all not very useful. I would joke with him because he would be able to type with one finger on his right hand. And I told him, like, hey, bro, before the stroke, the best you could do is 2 fingers out of 10. Now you got one. Like, this is still pretty good productivity. Because he would hunt and peck, from the typewriter days. They didn't use all their fingers. So, like, him having one finger just cuts him down. Like, it takes twice as long, but it's still very possible. I used to get, emails from him, and he'd be reviewing, stuff that people sent him, or he'd be writing a forward or stuff like that. So, we'd work on that with him. And, especially when Dylan and I would go down there, we would take him some Guinness because he's like, that's a pork chop in a bottle. So you need some Guinness. And he would send us out for welfare cheese. He said, go down to the deli and get, like, the big American, and have him slice it just like, you get, because it was like nostalgic from when he was a kid. Like, he just wanted some welfare cheese, like American cheese slices, the cheapest you can get, basically, right? So there was like little penchants like that he would like, he's like, we would, it's like a scavenger hunt. He'd like, go find this, and we'd have to go out and find a store that had like that particular cheese in that case, right? Because it's New York. A lot of places aren't stocking like welfare cheese, especially on the Upper West Side. It's like there's 300 cheeses in the store, and you're asking for the one that's like, you know, given to homeless people. But like the nostalgia of that food, the comfort food, that's what I was looking for. Um, and then when I'm giving him haircuts, he'd tell stories, right? And a lot of these stories, probably even today, are not fit for public consumption because some of the people are still alive. But there was one story that he told, and let me think, who's alive? No, these people pretty much all passed away. Um, they did this is like back during World War II, okay? When he's growing up and he's got some friends that he's running with, and it's draft dodging. And if you pay some money to these guys, they can get your name pulled from the draft. So you don't have to go, right? And there was a bunch of rich kids from like Long Island taking, and there was kind of a syndicate, like a junior mafia running this, right? And there was a senior mafia that benefits from it. So in the senior mafia, uh, Gatto is there when these guys are playing poker, and it's like Mario Puzo and some other people that are handling the draft dodging, if you will. Well, there's this Irish kid, and the people that were doing the draft dodging seemed to be of a couple religious ethnic groups, but not Irish. Okay. So this Irish kid comes along. He wants to get out of the draft. He pays the good money, whatever it was. It was a lot of money. Like, I don't know, maybe it was $4,000 in the 40s, which is like a lot of money back then, right? And they don't pull his name from the draft because they could just take his money. They don't have to actually serve him, right? And then that dude squeals and puts the pinch on that whole situation. And then one of the guys that Gatto knows, a very well-known person today, has to flee the country. It has to be like an exile, and then picks up his career over there with no hitches. And because that gentleman is, I believe he's still alive, and I reference him all the time, so I don't want him to be in the context. But yeah, there's just like crazy haircut stories, and a lot of times I would take the camera and I would film, and because of his delicate condition, just being in the hospital bed and whatnot, like, sometimes it's just like the camera's pointed at the bookcase or it's pointed far away so you could see him, but it's not like up in detail in his situation because we wanted to it was important, I thought, to like document those moments, but like I don't know what public audience would ever see those. But like, he has relatives. I've spoken to some people who have like there's he had the farm in upstate that is now an Airbnb. I don't know if you knew that, but what's it called? It's on Facebook as Solitude Farms, FARMZ. So if you look up Solitude Farms, that is John's nephew. His name is Taylor, and Taylor took the old farmhouse property that was like no electric or anything there. It was very rustic, right? And he renovated it, and he turned the barn into an Airbnb, and there's thousands of John's books in that Airbnb, right? So I haven't been there, and I haven't met Taylor, but we've talked on the phone several times over the years. Um, so yeah, there's a legacy, and I hope someday to have a John Taylor Gatto Memorial Museum. that can showcase the source materials that he drew from, other things that he published, things that he hasn't published because he never got time or the project freedom to do it, right? John was very much dependent on donations and didn't have a good sense of how to make his offer to the market. And that always kept him in a restricted cash situation where you're only doing things that other people want to pay you to do. Sometimes that's not the project you want to do. You know, I have a 6-inch binder of a project he wanted to do, but no one wanted to fund it. And so he ended up working. In fact, his stroke was derived from he wanted to do another book project. He needed to raise 50 grand for it. He had a friend who said, I'll give you 50 grand if you lose 50 pounds. So at the time when we were filming John, he's putting himself on a restrictive diet and kind of messing with his health. And over those next 2 weeks, I don't know what he was doing or what he was eating, but he was, in the midst of trying to take that guy, that friend. And I said in hindsight, like no friend, like a friend would give you the money for the project and not be like, you got to jump through these hoops of fire and put your health at risk. Now, anyway, I don't want to be judgmental. I'm just saying I think it played into him having a stroke later that month that he was trying to make it work by accepting that instead of knowing how to like go, either get a grant someplace else or take your products as existing and make an offer to the market to raise that money. Keeps a lot of people in, of his ilk, good researchers, excellent authors, but they struggle because they don't know how to do sales or marketing for their own endeavor. And when you go to other people who do that, they take a serious chunk because you don't know how to do that. And that's where all the money comes from. They're doing a very important part. So I don't know. I think American students should all graduate something knowing how to do those things for themselves. And then America would have a stronger future. And John would be, be happy about that.
Now, there's a few things that he said during the Ultimate History lesson that I'm so happy that you were able to capture on film. One of them was he tells this story. Well, maybe it's not a story, but he says that uh, his wife at one point had said to him, "Geez, John, you must really love children." And he said, "No, I love people." And it just struck me. It struck a nerve with me, like just hit me right at my core. Like, wow, like that's such a wholesome perspective to have, you know?
Well, I think that, his job as a New York City school teacher that was teaching kids in Harlem and then teaching kids in Midtown that were like the executives' kids and seeing that these kids all had equal potential. And then people also, it's a very popular thing, especially back in the day, kids are annoying to them. So it's like, John, how could you spend all this time and focus on kids? Like, don't you want to deal with adults and be of people of your own intelligence level, right? But he didn't see them as kids. He saw them as young people, young human beings, developing human beings who definitely needed this extra layer of like guidance, support, opportunity, because otherwise the doors are shut already and locked against you, right? But if you know how to go to the right person and say the right things, those doors can unlock just as easily. And they don't want you to know that because then you'd be bringing ideas out that challenge their ideas. And if their ideas are so great, they wouldn't be worried about their ideas being challenged, but really they know their ideas are inferior and they only remain the predominant ideas because of like monopoly of force, fraud, and coercion without being touched. And with that, you can make a very rigged market that looks a lot like freedom, but contains no freedom whatsoever, which is what they're building. And I just think we can do better. And the more people that know, the better plans we'll be able to develop to make it better, to make what they're doing obsolete. Slavery is obsolete. They just don't know it yet. And there's still a lot of slaves being held. But that idea is a time that, it's past. They want to make it forever with technological, cybernetic, use drones, robots, AI to separate them from the rest of us, like Elysium, but with less production value.
Yeah, I'd like to touch upon that in a minute, but I wanted to also uh, just say that the other thing that Gatto had said during the Ultimate History lesson was that writing your own script in life is your birthright. And that's like what it touches upon what you just mentioned is that's what they're getting in the way of. But this the technocratic control system that's being put in, like slowly but surely, that we're seeing these days. Who are the ones responsible for that, Rich?
I think the parents are responsible because if you're going to outsource your children for 40 hours a week into an institutionalized state-sponsored system, maybe you should have some more oversight. What's going on in front of them, around them, and being taught to them during the week. So ultimately, if it's your responsibility, you now have the power to change that. If I said it's the school's fault or anyone else, well, then parents have to wait for those institutions to change in their favor, and that's never going to happen. So even though it might sound kind of black pilled, kind of negative for me to say it's the parents who have lowered their standards and tolerated so much that the school system has done this thing, they can also undo it because they have the power. You had the power not to pay attention. Now you have the power to pay attention and give input and not let that go on in your school. And strength through numbers, strength through numbers, because that's how the other side dominated. You had a very small group of people with a very far extreme agenda, and they tried to normalize that. And I wouldn't have a problem with that, except you normalized it to generations of children who can never egress from that experience, most likely. They've been programmed during their formative years for those things. Now, the generation coming up, much easier time, but they weren't subjected to that psychological warfare, pseudo authority in their lives. And a lot of people, especially from COVID, those students are scarred, they're fearful, they're scared, they're traumatized. And unless they learn how to take self responsibility for that situation and say, look, bad on me. I had my guard down. I got all into the fear. I trusted what authority said. I never looked at what those conspiracy theories were to see if it was real. I just dismissed them as a pejorative. Oh, ivermectin, that's stupid. Oh, that's horse pay. Whatever you told yourself, right? Those things might have been something that could have saved someone in your family if you lost people during that time from the bioweapon, from the gene therapy, or just from the fear killing your immune system. What do you think fear does to your immune system? You think it keeps you a healthy slave? That's interesting. Maybe people should take a little inventory of their fears. You might not need them all.
It's just
They might
that
they might be playing into your captor's benefit. It might be like a Stockholm syndrome type of situation you could liberate yourself from pretty readily, and then you have post-traumatic growth instead of an ongoing stress syndrome.
makes me think of I think you coined the term intraspecific kleptoparasite.
I did, however, credit where credit is due. Let me
Just saying,
pull
like
that up.
what you're going on about makes me think about that term.
Yeah. Well, there's a topic called kleptoparasitism.
Well, for the
And
people watching, real quick,
yeah,
tell them
yeah.
what this is because
All
this
right.
is a fascinating. This is just awesome. I want people to know what they're looking at.
All right. So I'm using software called the Personal Brain, and you can get it for free at thebrain.com and tell Harlan that I sent you. So that software enables me to build relationship entity or entity relationship diagrams. These are entities. I'm mapping out the relationships, what came first, what came consequent or after. Kleptoparasitism would be a thought, and then you'd have thoughts above it that influence it, so like propagate it, and then you have thoughts below that could be instances of kleptoparasitism. Now, if I went back to the actual word, I can click open the attachment and we can go over here to the browser and we can read all about it after we close this ad. We don't need to say. Kleptoparasitism, meaning parasitism by theft, is a form of feeding in which one animal deliberately takes food from another. So it was, as they show here, there's some gulls. Miriam Rothschild in 1952. Let's see if I have her paper over here. She's the one who coins, yeah, here it is, 1952, intra-specific kleptoparasites. So these are like birds stealing from other birds, but they're not the same species. And I said, well, what we have is like that, but they're of the same species. So we have inter-specific kleptoparasites. They steal by acting as parasites, and they are of our own species, and they are not of one religion, race, creed, secret society. There's just a lot of people who think that they benefit from plundering other people's production, which leads into a more specific idea like globalism, which is the removal of individual sovereignty to be subject to an international superstate, a new world order is what they call it.
Intergenerational organized crime run by intra-specific kleptoparasites.
And multi-generational serial killers,
Yeah.
because that they leave signatures on their crimes. There are secret societies that are multi-generational, and their symbols might be on your money, for instance. And if you don't think the money is associated with the militarism, like when did America become a war economy? Before or after the Federal Reserve started printing money in the name of the Congress that it was a right that the Congress didn't have a right to give away? We only had the right to coin money, not to outsource it to an international agency that prints money out of nothing and drains the wealth out of America. That will be an act of war, but no one got the word out. So it continues to be the word of the day. Yeah.
Could reinvigorating a sense of like critical thinking really be the best way to combat this?
Most likely, because if you want to take up arms against your oppressor, good luck. They've taken your wealth and invested it in all sorts of things you can't defeat very readily. However, most of their control over people is through the individual assuming things that are true that are very much not true, and they lose their power. If we were to just take back our power by being incredulous, meaning not believing claims coming from powerful authorities that might not have our interests at heart, right? Government says blank. I'm going to be saying maybe that's true, maybe it's not. How would I know? Let's go look for the evidence. And now we can understand, wow, that's not true. They're lying to people. And if you don't look it up and know the difference, you're probably going to lose your freedom from siding with, we got to go get Saddam Hussein. We got to go over here so they don't get us over here. Whatever the thing is, this tiny vial has, anthrax, Colin Powell said. Oh, they took the babies from the incubators and threw them on the cold floor. It's like, if you believe that stuff, you just advocated killing 1 million people who had nothing to do with anything in your life. And that builds a negative type of karma that you're not going to find out about till later in this game. So prevent from making the negative karma in the first place, and learn how to do the right thing.
And you're a very big proponent of the trivium method. Uh, I don't know if I'm sorry if I don't know if there's a question there, but I just wanted to point that out.
What's the power of a method? That's a great question, James. See, it's because you encounter problems every day, but if you don't have a method, you're addressing the problem solving uniquely every time. It's called ad hoc. You make it up as you go along, right? It'd be like if you had a job that's like cleaning bathrooms, and every time you went into the bathroom, you started in a different place and did a different thing, you would never get efficient and effective and build excellence in that task. Just any type of activity. If you address it in the same way and you get your repetitions and your practice, you will improve. So the trivium allows you to say, hello, challenge or obstacle. I'm not scared of you. I'm going to look deeply into you. I'm going to understand you. I'm going to either go around you, I'm going to go through you, but you're not going to block me from my goal. Now, I'm going to use my 5 senses. I'm going to identify the individual parts. I'm going to earn the right to understand how they fit together. Sometimes there's trial and error. Sometimes there's contradictions to be resolved. At the end of that, I will now have knowledge on a new thing, and I can go take actions demonstrating that knowledge. And that also is a currency that you can pass to others. So I not only get productivity, but I get a currency that I can transfer to others to empower them likewise, which is useful. And utility in the marketplace is rewarded with money. That's the means of exchange. All transactions are based on trust, and the trust is you're going to get utility for your investment, right? So now working in that framework, everything's a lot more simple. You have money struggles, great. How much money do you want to make? Do you need to make these sort of things? And then what skills or offer are you going to bring to the table? I want to be a millionaire and I wash windows. Okay, well then you better go learn how to abseil and book some skyscrapers. And if you want to know how to do that, I have a graduate in Australia who has a multi-million dollar abseiling window cleaning company for the past 10 years, cleaning the brightest skyscrapers on Australia's Gold Coast. So it sounds like an impossible thing to do, and yet people just go and do these things because no one told them it was impossible. They didn't hold these inaccurate ideas in their minds, so they go do these incredible things. However, if we're always like, that's for other people, or I'm not good enough, or I could never learn that, or I've been ripped off, whatever the thing is, that's your limiting constraint on your growth. So I'm not saying take that away or remove that. I'm just letting you know that's the limiting constraint on your growth. What would you like to do with it? Would you like to move it further so you can get a little bit more growth? It's like giving yourself a little extra room on your belt, but it's the opposite. Like that would be bad, but this is good. I should have thought out that metaphor, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. So learning how to put yourself into growth mode, how to choose and schedule of your own free will, what complexities you want to introduce to develop what types of results on the other side. Because the whole marketplace is just, it's just people trying to achieve results they want and don't have, and people trying to get rid of problems they have and don't want. And learning how to use a method like the trivium to go stand in either one of those value spots and deliver problem solving is that's all the profitability in the marketplace. It doesn't come from not solving problems, and it doesn't come from solving problems inefficiently, inconsistently, or inaccurately. It comes from applying a time-proven model of how to get things done in a consistent repetition, and then you earn more money from the market than you need, and then you get your free time back. You get to actually, like, I want to play guitar, but I want to upgrade my guitar. Great. You have a physical monetary constraint. Let's say you want to buy a new $20,000 guitar. How much is your offer, and how many offers do you need people to say yes to get the guitar? And then you go market that at 100x. So you need, 100,000 people to see your offer for 10,000 leads. 1,000 of those click, 100 of those buy, and now 100 times your price of your offer you now have for your guitar. If not, if you don't have that skill set, hey boss, can I have a raise? Hey boss, can I have an advance? Hey boss, I got to leave this job, or I got to get a second job, or whatever the thing is. It's like, that's not a way to build yourself up in the world. That is a way to stay exactly where you are, but you're losing money because your money's losing more value than you can save it with getting interest. There's no saving your way out of these problems. You have to learn how to be more productive. And that means, in a lot of cases, not doing more to learn to add value to yourself. So when you do things in the market, it's a higher price per transaction that you're getting from that. And that's not like a greedy thing. That's just like learning how to be an adult and put food on the table and pay for rent and insurance and other things that you need to have a family in this world type of thing.
And these are all the things that you teach in autonomy.
Well, I teach people how to embrace the opportunities where those learning events occur regularly for other students. I can't do it for them, and it's not something you can just hear and be like, I got it. You have to actually, like, autonomy is a course of actions, course of breakthrough actions, because those actions that you have to take formulate your internal leap of faith that you're going to do something and not quit on yourself, and then stick around to see the results. And then you're going to repeat that process again and again all the way through your success. So I really studied the problem, understood what a solution would look like. It pretty much looks opposite of schooling. So, education becomes schooling when you take free will out. Okay, let's put free will back in. There are no grades. There's nothing mandatory in the course, and you have lifetime enrollment to the curriculum. What else can I do? Well, I can surround you with people that you would voluntarily want to be around and who are enthusiastic about being there and being valuable in that situation, in a fear-free zone of mutual exploration where everybody gets encouraged. And it's not all just rah, rah, but it's like, here's what you did good. Here's where you can improve. So there's validation and camaraderie for what you're doing and stepping up and being courageous and getting into growth mode. But there's also realistic, like, hey, now that we recognize what you did good, here's where you need to improve. And that dynamic interactive feedback, the faster it happens in those constructive loops, the faster people grow. And it doesn't happen at all in school. So people think, oh, dude, if I could learn something, I would have done it in 15,000 hours. If I was supposed to be a smart person in this world, it would have happened during all those years of school or the 5 years of college. But all that did is take you off like a tangent path that goes nowhere. You got to come back to yourself, know thyself, know your environment. Now make a better plan. What does your life look like if you remove all these restrictive constraints on your growth? What does it look like if you start showing up for yourself just once a week, 10% of your time, like the lowest 10% productivity in your week? What happens if we make that your highest productivity in the week? And how does it influence the rest of your week now that you are in growth mode and embracing that you can be something more substantial in this life than what they gave you as default? But it's completely in your hands and up to you on your own schedule. It's just, most of the time when people get into growth mode, they want to stay in growth mode. And so people keep coming back because they've grown. Now they want to check back in with the basics, the methods, the principles, the strategies. Oh, here's where I can improve this time around. And then it's like a convection current of causality. It's growth, it's learning, it's life, it's living a better life, it's being engaged in more substantial activities where you have less regret and more happiness. It's, like the holy grail that people are talking about, but no one made a map how to get there. And the penitent man is humble before God. That's the first rule. That's Indiana Jones' Last Crusade.
You
That's the
are
first trial on the Holy Grail when they get there.
it with autonomy. It sounds like you are helping give back to people their ability to write their own script in life that John referred to as their birthright.
Yeah, I mean, John's books are all about how this group of people subverted our education system to make automatons. But, had he had more time on the field, he probably would have come up with some solutions that are right in line with what we're talking about, because it's not rocket science. If they took out freedom of association, then maybe we should put it back. If they took out critical thinking and learning individual parts, how they fit together and how to use and troubleshoot something, a method that's been used for thousands of years, maybe we should put that back. If they took away these things to take away our connection to reality, then the replacement of these things, reestablishment with objective reality. And with establishment to objective reality, now you can get your spiritual or your subjective reality in line with that. And when those two things are congruent, we're in the moment, we're happy, we're useful, we're living our best life. And when those things are incongruent, people get, mentally fogged up, and then they end up going to ask somebody who doesn't know any better. And that person writes them a little piece of paper and gets paid to give them petrochemicals, which is not something they have a shortage of. What they have a shortage of is knowing how to competently use their quantum computer to generate the results in this reality as we would like to see through cause and effect and law of identification, that which exists. So there's a lot to learn, but it's fun once you start learning. And I think the universe is a big classroom, and we should learn how to take the course.
I'm a graduate of autonomy. I mean, as you know, but people listening need to know that like it's helped me out a lot since I joined.
Well,
And
you had microphone skills, right? You had podcasting and stuff before autonomy. But some of the things that I noticed in your growth, it's just like your self-confidence. And it's not a form of arrogance. It's just like you knowing that you can show up for yourself and do things that otherwise, like, there's a lot of introverts that go through autonomy and learn how to not be introverts, but we always have that introversion, that we have to get past, right? When we step in front of cameras and lights and microphones, and we know people are looking at us and scrutinizing our every move and word, right? But we have to leave that at the door. Otherwise, we can never have a conversation. And if we don't have these conversations, especially in the interview form, interviews are how you access information and experiences that are useful to you solving problems and gaining results that they've already had the payoff on. And so it's your skeleton key for success, because you can call someone, look, if, let's say, God forbid, there's an issue and you can't afford the list price. What do we do? I can't talk to the lawyer, the accountant, the doctor, whoever. I can't afford the bill to get that information. Hey, I would like to interview you. Here's my use case, right? I see that you do really great work, but people on Facebook aren't knowing about your business. I'd like to come by and ask you these 6 questions. I will film it, edit it, produce it, give you a copy of it, and help you distribute it. You're going to see 10% more, whatever the thing is, offer to do a service for them. And now you can ask them any question you want during the interview. They don't know how to do the thing you're offering to do for them. Now they will do a thing for you you don't know how to do. That's a type of currency that you want access to when you need it. I could go any place and offer that type of service because I'm pretty sure most places I do business with, they don't know how to do that stuff for themselves. They don't know where to get labor or leads, and they kind of just juggle their way through their business life. If you want something from that business you can't afford, you just have to make them an offer they can't refuse. But it doesn't mean like create something out of nothing. You have to be able to spot that opportunity, see what could be arranged to deliver this result, explain that vision or result in a way that they say yes to. Now you can do that without money, right? There are other ways to get things done without, and money is just a storage of energy of knowing how to do stuff like that. Go solve problems in the large numbers for other people. Money becomes a non-problem because that's what it's all about. It's an exchange of services. And if you want money on your end, it's just a stack of I have provided value to other people and have not dipped into it more than I have provided. Then you get a stack of money, right? So money's not the end goal, but you need it because things in life cost money. And if you don't know how to tackle like that's 101, that's first grade. You're never going to get to the PhD level of anything because you don't know how to do like the kindergarten first grade stuff of make your offer, get some money from the market and repeat, or do it at larger numbers, volumes, high value skills, you know? So lots of opportunity, but it takes special people who respect themselves to open up that type of long-term learning capability.
This has been really fun, Rich. Thank you so much
It
for coming on and joining me.
has been an hour. That went by really fast. So
It did.
that says a lot about your ability to ask a question and then sit back and listen.
But you got my back that one about the trivium. I was like, oh, I just started it. I couldn't get the whole thing out. But thank you very much.
No,
Um,
dude. I mean, what people should know is, you know, when I first off, the interview skill set is the first skill I teach students in autonomy. The first several weeks, they're learning how to inventory and eradicate their fears and other baggage they won't need on the climb. And then, like, the first skill is you got to get past the ability, like, you have to be able to break the ice, build rapport, like, establish a communication, and then get the information exchange you need. And if you don't learn how to do that, that's like the key to winning friends and influencing people is knowing how to communicate all the stuff you've internalized and processed, because then that's where the value exchange starts. And most people don't know how to do that. And those active literacy skills are so important in the other areas of high value skill building that we do. It takes a while to like acclimate. And the first time we taught autonomy 6 years ago, all the exercises were on audio. So there was no being on video. Zoom wasn't a thing yet. And you had a lot of people who would like to participate, but they liked it even more if they could just listen to other people practice. But then once we started getting people on video and people started being more comfortable, like meeting and greeting other people, then it became easy for them to meet everyone in that season or that iteration, that evolution of autonomy so they could have strong bonds with their classmates and for those conversations to yield uniform results across all their meetings of other students. They all pretty much know the same thing about each one of them. Very useful things. Why they're here so they can help encourage other students if they start to like get in the learning curve and be like, woe is me before they get their results. They can help out with that. They can bird dog opportunities for things that those students are trying to bring to reality. They can also learn what their value is because when you hear it from other people, they're like, you're really good at this. It kind of means more and you take it more substantially than if you're self-noticing it, right? So there's all these beautiful dynamics that come in, but they couldn't be unleashed unless we teach people like the basic how to do an interview and your ability to ask questions and then use your active listening skills to ask more questions, to elucidate certain facts, to illuminate certain perspectives or angles, and to bring value to the audience is duly noted. And very well done, sir, for getting me on the calendar and executing this interview. I'd say you graduated to a next level. We need to create a next level, though. I don't know where you're going with that, but
well, thank you very much. I want to give you an opportunity to tell everybody about your podcast, Grand Theft World, real quick before we sign off. So please take it away.
all right. So traditionally, I had a podcast that taught people about history, the New World Order in all great detail, but there became a need a couple years ago to keep track on the weekly news and map it back to that history. So I do that once a week for 7 hours live all Sunday night into the wee hours of Monday morning at grandtheftworld.com. The Grand Theft World podcast takes the week's news and it condenses them into a way that you can actually understand. If you don't understand what happened last week, how are you ever going to understand what happens this week? So we use critical analysis and evidence and artifact and a wide plethora of things outside the narrative that are substantial and worthy of your consideration. So those time capsules every week give people now and the future a seamless, accurate, non-funhouse mirror view into our history of how psyops are rolled out to the public, how the public fights back, how the censorship waves come in. All these types of things that were kind of nebulous and amorphous are now clearly documented. And all the source clips from all the evidence from COVID and all these other things that have happened, they're sequentially logged in the time capsules of Grand Theft World. And then we also have a feature called Clip Genie, where you can go to Clip Genie and you can click the button and you can search any episode, any topic that's been in Grand Theft World. So there's 2,000 hours of audio content and evidence, but you might just say Fauci, and you're going to look for evidence on Fauci. You're making a documentary. Here's all the clips you need. And each show is categorized. You could go to the time code. Here's all the mentions of Fauci. You can go here. It'll play that part of the video, right? So you got the source code, the evidence, it's all there. So that's Grand Theft World Sunday nights, grandtheftworld.com. And then during the week, I participate in training adults. And that looks something like this over here at getautonomy.info. These types of skills are evergreen. You will use them every day for the rest of your life with a great deal of success if you learn to show up for yourself and load that mental software in the first place. It's not that hard. I can teach it to anybody. It will work for you. All the little fears and negative self-talk that is wanting you not to get autonomy, I say lay those questions out at a next AMA or Autonomy Quest on Thursday nights where people come and get their questions answered rather, and lay those non-reality based doubts to rest and see how easy and accessible it is for you to do what 1,000 other students have done for themselves. Step up consistently, build new skills that you can't get hardly anywhere else. We're the only school on the planet that teaches objective sales in an ethical way. It's problem solving, not convincing, conniving, persuading, or pushing. And that skill set alone powers a whole bunch of other executive high value skill sets. Knowing how to sell in a way that's not cringeworthy is a paramount skill. You can't get a degree for it, but it's a heavy duty 6-figure skill set, and it doesn't take that long to pick up. So I'll leave it there. Getautonomy.info.
Yeah, all the links will be in the show notes, folks. Rich, thank you so much. Your body of work over the years is truly inspiring, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for you and for autonomy and everything else, really.
Well, James, I'm very impressed but not surprised, right? When I first met you, I was like, this dude's diamond in the rough, and he just needs, to go through his own self-polishing. And I think your next big interview is coming up with Benny Wills on Autonomy Quest. It's coming up soon. I talked to Benny earlier today. He was psyched that you would be doing the interview section of that. And he had kind words to say about your reputation as well. So good for you for doing likewise. Taking
That's news to me.
Yeah, being a winner out there.
Yeah, I met Benny briefly about maybe a year and a half ago. Anyways, yeah. All right, Rich, this has been really fun, man. But I'm going to let you go. But we should do this again sometime. You're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, we can get into advanced content next time. Send me a link so I can share it and distribute it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Peace.